Welcome back again. Today we're going to look at proportions. I briefly mentioned the word. I didn't really define it for you in that first video. A proportion is basically two equivalent ratios. It's the easiest way to say it. My definition says it's an equation stating that two ratios are equivalent. We call it an equation because it's got an equal sign. I'm telling you that two values are equal. So 3/5 forms a proportion with 6/10, meaning these are two equivalent ratios. That's all it means. How can we determine if two numbers form a proportion? Well, to determine that, what we're going to use is cross products. So we have a cross products rule, which states that in a proportion, the products of the means are the same as the product of the extremes. Now, what that looks like if we've written them in ratio forms, it makes a little more sense. The extremes are the ones on the end, the extreme edge. The means are the ones in the middle. What that looks like if we've got them written in fraction form, which we're generally going to, and why we call them cross products, is because I'm multiplying the ones that are kitty corner to each other, that are basically we're forming an X, the ones that are across from each other. So they're cross products. So basically what this is saying is if I multiply 6 times 5, I get 30. If this is a proportion, when I multiply 3 times 10, I should get the same thing, which indeed I do. So I know that these indeed do form a proportion, or these are equivalent ratios. So here's a couple different ways you'll see problems. The first one is just telling me, yes or no, are these proportions, meaning are these actually equivalent? So we're going to use our cross products rule, and I'm going to use two different colors because I like to do that. So that means I'm going to multiply these two numbers, and again I'm pulling out my handy dandy calculator to save some time. 18 times 6 is 108. So what I need to do is see if my cross product of my other two equals the same thing. So 12 times 10, I can actually do that one in my head, is 120. These are not equal. They do not equal each other. So my answer here is no. These are not a proportion. Their cross products are not equal. They're not equivalent ratios. Here I want to do the same thing. 6 times 6 is 1. I can tell you right now that these are not going to be. I don't know what 36 times 6 is off the top of my head. It is 216. But those, again, are obviously not equivalent. So no, these do not form a proportion. In all honesty, I didn't have to do the second multiplication because I know 36 times 6 is way more than 6. But I just did it so that you could see the idea there. Okay, here you notice I've written them in word form instead of fraction form. So if it's easier for you, you can rewrite it in fraction form to use your cross products. Or if you'll recall, it's my means, my extremes. So my outer and my inner. Either way works. Now I'm going to rewrite these, and you'll notice that it'll give us a fraction and a fraction. Don't let that confuse you. Okay? I'm still going to solve it the same way. I'm going to cross multiply. So 4 1/2, and I'm again going to, for the sake of time, use my calculator. 4 1/2 times 4/5 gives me, oops, wrong color, 18/5. 9 times 2/5 also gives me 18/5. These are equivalent, so number 3, my answer is yes. Yes, these two form a proportion. My cross products came out equivalent. That means that they're a proportion. They're equivalent ratios. So here, you'll notice they're written in ratio form. So again, don't let that confuse you. You can remember to multiply your inner and your outer, or again, you can set it up as a fraction. I'm just going to do my inner and my outer here. And again, my handy dandy calculator. Let me use the other color for that so we don't get confused. So 1.2 times 3.6 gives me 4.32. Now I'll do my means, or my inside numbers. 1.8 times 2.4 gives me 4.32. So those are equal to each other. So yes, these ones form a proportion. So in these ones, all I have to do is determine if they form a proportion. Yes, they do. Are my cross products equal? Yes, they are. So yes, they form a proportion. Or no, they're not equal. So no, they don't form a proportion. The other thing we're going to do, and this is going to tie back into using our equation solving skills. Sometimes what you're going to see is I'm going to give you something like this. I'm telling you that these are in proportion to each other. If they're in proportion, we know for a fact that their cross products are equal. So that means I can solve for an unknown number by multiplying for my cross products, then solving my equation. So here I've got 5 times 48, which gives me 240. And on this side, I've got a 6 times an n. So now the way I've written it with my cross products, because I know they're equal, is telling me that 6 times n equals 240. Well, if you recall, how do we solve equations? We need to use the inverse or the opposite operation so that we can undo what's been done. So how am I going to undo this multiplication? By dividing. If I divide this side by 6, I need to divide the other side by 6. And when I divide 240 by 6, I get 40. So here we're just taking our cross products rule to write ourselves an equation. Then we're going back and remembering how we solve equations. And again, if you've forgotten that, go back and watch the older videos to refresh your memory. That's the joy of these. They're always available for you. So the same thing here. Here I've got a 36 times t. And on this side, I've got 8 times 9, which gives me 72. Now, my rules for solving equations tell me that I want to get the t by itself. So I'm going to do that by undoing my operation. I'm undoing multiplication by dividing, and I find out that t is equal to 2. Okay. Over here, you'll notice this is a little more complex. Over here, I've given you 2 different variables that we're solving for. So what we're going to do is right now, we're just going to ignore this one. Don't even look over here right now. Just look at my first 2 numbers. We're going to solve for our unknown here. So I'm going to use my cross products rule to solve for my unknown. I get 3 times x. 2 times 15 is 30. So how am I going to get x by itself? I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So my x is equal to 10. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 10. I'm going to plug it in for this number. I'm going to erase this line, and now I'm going to ignore this side because I don't need that side. I'm only going to look over here at this side. So 10 over 15 is equal to 8 over y. So again, I'm going to use my cross products rule. So we're still doing the same thing here. The only difference is that I'm doing it 2 different times. All right, so just pretend they're 2 different problems. 8 times 15, I'm going to use the calculator, gives me 120. So how am I going to get y by itself? I'm going to undo that by dividing, and I find out that y is equal to 12. So x is equal to 10, y is equal to 12. So we're doing the same thing. Don't let it throw you if there's 3 of them. Just take it one step at a time. Look at your first proportion, then look at your second proportion, all right? Over here, you'll notice I have decimals in my fractions. Again, don't let that throw you off. Here I've got 0.9 or 0.9 times y is equal to 1.2 times 3.6, which my calculator tells me is 4.32. How am I going to get y by itself? I'm going to undo my multiplication by dividing. Divide both sides by the same thing, and again, handy dandy calculator tells me that my answer is 4.8. All right, so we're really just using the same rule, the cross products, then we're just going back to solving a simple one-step equation, which you've been doing for quite a while now. Again, if you have questions or you're struggling with it, you can go back and rewatch old videos. You can always rewatch this video. You can post your questions to the comments section. You can email me or you can ask me in class. You guys have a great night.